So does everybody remember that? It was a Coke commercial. It became a very popular song 40 years ago. 40 years ago. Late 60s, early 70s. When we were listening to that 40 years ago, we were as far away from World War II as we are right now from the 60s and the hippie generation. How's that put things in perspective for you? Do you know why that song was popular back then? Think back into the dim recesses of your memory and remember what was happening in our society. A song about peace and harmony and hope, sung by hippie singers from California, advertising a commercial product that had been around since the 1930s, 1890s actually, but popular since the 1930s. That in the 30s, in the depths of the generations, that same corporation spawned a very popular image of a Christian saint. Did you know that?
Yeah.
It's named Santa Claus. Santa Claus wasn't popular until Coca-Cola made him the theme of their ad campaigns in the 20s and 30s through the Depression. And here we get to the 60s. And the Vietnam War was raging. The fabric of Western society has been torn. Young people are up in arms against their parents. People are dodging drafts. There are hijackings in airplanes, and people get on airplanes with terror. War rages. People are worrying about the economy. Gas prices are rising. And along comes a song that says, I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony and sing about peace. We could put that on the radio today and people would say, wow, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed, has it? And 40 years before that song was popular, that generation was struggling with the after effects of a global conflict called World War II, which was only, roughly 40 years after the one before that. I remember reading a newspaper article when I was in a church in Nova Scotia that talked about the ills of society. It was about how young people didn't adhere to the rule of law and that their parents had lost control of them, that the prices were rising and that things were out of control, and that there was no more respect and that the violence was rampant. And the article was written in 1890. The voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight the highways. Have you ever been to a wilderness? Most of us will say, yeah, I've been maybe to the Sonoma Desert, or I've been up by Denby. And we have this image when we hear the Bible readings about Jesus going to the wilderness or John the Baptist coming from the wilderness. Interesting family, huh? They're cousins. I love that fact that they're cousins. Mary and Elizabeth were cousins. That makes Jesus and John the Baptist second cousins. That family spent a lot of time in the wilderness, going and coming. Well, that sounds like the rest of us. Wildernesses. How many people here have done wilderness camping? Gone out into the wilds. You can watch it on TV, Man vs. Wild. What I can tell you about the wilderness is that it's beautiful. Magnificent sunsets and sights and things, wonders to behold. The beauty of nature, all that stuff. But we're not talking about that kind of wilderness. Yeah, maybe we are. Because if you spend any time in the wilderness, you know that one misstep and you're the next creature's lunch. They're wild places. Well, that's why they're called wilderness. Wildness. And so we have this image of Jesus going to the wilderness, and we think of it as some barren desert with some sort of wild dangers. We hear of John coming from the wilderness, and we think he must have been on some hermit retreat out in the desert someplace or up on a mountaintop in some wild place. Maybe he was just living in downtown Jerusalem. Because where's the wild place in your life? The reason we have songs by the Coca-Cola singers about peace and harmony, the reason newspaper articles are written in the 1890s in small little coastal villages in Nova Scotia wondering about the dangers of society, the reason people write articles in Maclean's magazine today about the dangers of world travel or walking across the street or what's happening in Vancouver or Kingston or Los Angeles or any place, it's because we don't have to go very far to find the wild place. Some of us just have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and let the terrors of our lives overtake us to know that we're in the wild place. Some of us only have to go and look into the eyes of a loved one and see the trouble in their life to know that we're in a wild place, a place that is uncontrollable, where we are not in control, where we are in fear, where we perceive a danger. Yet the storms of the mind or of our bodies or of our neighbors or our society. What does that have to do with anything? It has to do everything with God. Because God doesn't come to the oasis. God comes to us in the wild place. The birth of Jesus, we spend so much time on it without realizing what it really is. It's about perceiving the gentle presence of God in the darkest moment. Canadians benefit, as all Northern Hemispheric people do, of having Christmas on December 25th. Our Southern Hemisphere brothers and sisters don't get the same blessing because it's the longest day of the year for them. They aren't talking about light coming in the darkness. They're going to the beach and having sunsets at 10 o'clock at night. We're coming home from work in the dark. And we're dealing with cold, bleak, rainy, dingy days, which, if you have any kind of depression problems, it's really helpful. But we also get to understand what it's about. It's about living in that wild place. Knowing that as we pass through that wild place, we are not alone. God is with us. God may be in the joy of a baby. Think about it. I love it when people talk about the wonder of a baby's birth. And it's true. Talk to young families, young people, young mothers when their babies are first born. And they're just, it's everything. And they're not stopping to think it's one more mouth to feed, it's how am I going to struggle to make this happen, and the sleepless nights. That comes a few days later, a few weeks later. But the reality is that in that moment, something happens that breaks through all the other issues of their life. And for that one treasured moment, they are lifted up out of the darkness into the light, a light that is divine. It's the wonder of the birth. That is the image that comes to us in this time of the year. If we wait for it with every baby, we're going to be in trouble. But we have to understand that God will break through all the time. That the voice of one calling in the wilderness isn't the voice of one saying, hey everybody, notice the baby. It's the one that's saying, hey everybody, notice God's now living here with us. Your life, it's not so bad. You may think it is. You may wish you had more. You may wish you had less. I don't know. You We may wish, because we all want something that we don't have, but it's about understanding that the God that is with us gives us enough, is sufficient for the day, is the hope for the day, and the belief in tomorrow. That the love of God will animate those tired, sore muscles, pick us up when we're feeling down, give us a hug, dust us off, send us on the way. That whenever we're getting on that airplane to go travel with the family and friends, we don't have to worry about whether it's going to be hijacked. Because we've already let our lives get hijacked by something else. We've gotten our lives hijacked by the love of God. That we've allowed ourselves to be set off the course of destruction. That we've allowed ourselves to have our eyes opened to see something wonderful in something ordinary. The voice of one calling in the wilderness, the voice that was prophesied by Isaiah, was believed to be made manifest in John the Baptist, is the voice of the ordinary calling to us to the ordinary. It wasn't a magi calling out. It wasn't King Solomon calling out, or King David, or any of the great kings. It wasn't some majestic